Welcome back, Solcana athletes and coaches. Spring Cycle 2023, I'm going to talk about the mobility exercises we're going to use to make progress in our 4 mobility goal areas. The first area is calf, ankle, knee mobility. We have the calf smash. I have a kettlebell here. I'm going to rest my calf on the kettlebell and move side to side, windshield wiper fashion. I'm going to try to hit this entire length, focusing on the areas that are the gnarliest. With a kettlebell, I don't need to put a lot of extra weight by lifting my hips up, so I can just relax here and let just the weight of my leg really get in there. I can put my other leg on here if I needed more. I don't need more. Again, just trying to cover this whole area in the time that I have and spending the most time on the gnarly spots. If I get to a place that's really tough, I can just rest and do some point and flex. Spending about the same amount of time on each side. Exercise number 2 for the calves is heel drops off of a plate. So I have one big plate here. I'm going to go up with both feet, and then I'm going to come down with just one foot, coming all the way down. I could probably use another plate on this to get even a little bit deeper. I'm going to alternate these, so I'm going up on both feet and then coming down on the other side. I'm going to do some of these with legs straight, and then I'm going to do some of them with my leg bent. So here I am, still getting a big point, but coming down, keeping that knee bent. That's a little bit harder. So for the most part, we're going to be alternating these and taking them to a stretch on that calf and Achilles. We're also going to get into pistol squats and modified pistol squat options during this. And one other exercise that we're going to add in for our warm-ups is a tibialis raise. Using the wall, I'm going to lean back some amount. I'm going to have my legs more or less together, and I'm lifting my toes towards the ceiling and then releasing. I can be standing more upright for a little bit less intensity, or leaning back a little bit more for more intensity. Really pulling the toes up towards the ceiling, trying to have the whole rest of my body be nice and lengthened. For the overhead shoulder and spine mobility goal, we're going to work on elevated pullovers. So here I have a bench. I'm going to drop myself off and get just my shoulders on the bench and then perform a pullover. So allowing the weight to draw my arms towards that overhead position and then pulling back. I don't want to have my low back really arched, but I can have my hips lower here with some activation through the core. The amount of weight I'm using is just enough to feel like it pulls me into a bit of a stretch. Relatively slow, spending some time in that stretch zone. The bench is one option. A foam roller is another option that might be a little bit less intense. So foam roller is right between my shoulder blades. Again, still dropping off slowly and squeezing back up. If that is too intense, you can just use an ab mat on the floor, and that's still going to offer some extension of the thoracic spine. And for this one, it's more important that I keep this nice and tight, nice strong brace as I lower and avoid letting my low back peel up, but rather keep the low back relatively flat as I lower that weight. That's the elevated pullover. For our shoulders, we're also going to be working on just overhead holds, so single weight or double weight overhead holds. Another exercise for the shoulders that we're going to work on is bench curls. So again, the weights just need to be heavy enough to pull me into whatever amount of stretch I want to work on for the day. So I have 2 dumbbells. I'm lying back. For this, feet can be on the bench, that's fine. I'm going to allow the weights to pull my shoulder into extension, and I'm really going to think about walking my shoulder blades together so they're flat on the bench, and I'm in this nice extension. I would want to avoid extending and having my shoulders come up at all. So we really want shoulders to be really flat against the bench. Squeezing shoulder blades together, I'm going to try to leave my elbow where it is and bring the weight up. If people have a fair amount of extension like I do, their weights may touch the floor, that's okay. We could also put a plate underneath one end or the other of our bench. These are bench curls. And again, the main thing is allowing the shoulder blades to come really flat to the bench so that we're getting this retracted shoulder and this stretch through the front of the shoulder while we're hitting extension. For our hip extension, we're going to be working on some foam rolling or smashing of the quads. We can use a ball or a foam roller, but the point is that we want to move across the muscle fibers and we want the muscles to relax. So we can do some butt kickers here. We can also squeeze our quads and then relax them. And the slow movement side to side, getting all the way from above the knee to just below the hip, is going to help release some of the stuck bits in our quads. So first is just sort of going over the quads like this. We want to spend time on the parts that are the most stuck and move side to side across those parts, flexing and relaxing those muscles to use that time efficiently. The next exercise for hip extension we're going to use is couch stretch. So the first step is to get an ab mat next to where the wall meets the floor, and we want our knee to go right back and almost touch the wall. If we're even like 4 or 6 inches out from the wall, it's going to feel very different than if our knee is all the way back, almost touching the wall. From here, this might be our stretch, and we're going to think about squeezing the glutes to take the curve out of our low back, and we can just turn that glute squeeze on and off. Another level up is going to be getting that foot out front. And again, I can do this while really letting my back sag, or I can think about squeezing that glute on and off for the time I'm here. A foam roller or a PVC stick is a nice way to support oneself here. And then we're working towards getting more and more upright, again, with glute activation and with core activation so that I'm not just allowing my back to arch, but rather I'm getting hips back and working on this front of hip tightness. That's our couch stretch. Also for our hip extension, we're going to be working on Bulgarian split squats. So I'm getting the top of my foot on a bench, fairly far behind me, working on letting that knee come down. And the goal here is to feel some amount of stretch. So again, I don't want to arch through my back. I want to remain fairly neutral and fairly upright. Bringing knee towards the floor, possibly even to the floor, is a good goal. And we could weight this if we needed that sort of challenge. For our sit and reach, or hip flexibility, hamstring length, and back flexion, we're going to do the neutral down roll up, which is kind of like a Jefferson curl. Weight is kind of optional and should be light enough that it, again, just helps tune into the stretch. So I'm going to go neutral down, like an RDL, Romanian deadlift, keeping my back neutral as long as I can. And then once I hit sort of maximum length for my hamstrings, then I'm going to allow my back to flex, allowing that stretch to happen for a breath, and then rolling up, working on segmented spinal movement. So trying to move through each vertebrae, coming back to stacked. Neutral down, roll up, round at the bottom, breath, rolling up, pulling my core in to try to articulate through each vertebrae. If you are in some sort of active back injury or spasm, this might not be the right thing for you. It's good to approach it with caution. Again, weight is optional. For our hamstring length, we are also going to use a hamstring smash. The best way to do this is on a box where a foot can move freely with a lacrosse ball. So I'm going to put my lacrosse ball under the center of my thigh, and I'm going to move side to side over the muscle fibers of my hamstring. I can also do some of this knee extension. I can even press my heel in to contract those muscles and then relax and do my knee extension. And our goal is to get all the muscles from just up from the knee all the way up to the end of our thigh bone where the hip socket is. And we can just play around in that entire range for the time that we have. Again, we don't have to be moving too quickly. We want to allow our muscles to relax and find the spots that seem like they need the most release in our hamstrings. Oh yeah, there it is. Finally, for a hamstring and back flexion, we're going to do a banded forward fold with extension. So I'm going to get into my seated forward fold position, get a fair amount of tension on this band, and allow myself to hinge forward first, round forward next, stretch for a breath, and then pull myself back to neutral spine, extending my back slightly. Shoulder blades can squeeze together here, and again, hinging forward, allowing the band to pull us into spinal flexion, breath, pulling back to neutral. That's our banded forward fold with extension. We don't need the hugest band in the world, but we do want to get far enough away so that the band continues to pull us through our deepest stretch. There's our mobility exercises. We're going to see those on heavy rotation in our warm-up, along with some other things for variety, and we're going to see what effect those have on our 4 mobility goals for this cycle. Enjoy!